One factor which we have in life in general, but especially also with regard to regulatory structures in the European Union, is information is getting ever more important. There's information exchange between industries and authorities. There is information exchange between authorities on the national and the European level, as well as amongst national levels. And responses to regulatory questions are more and more developed on this basis of this exchange of information. And that brings challenges for values. On one side, of course, the well-known data protection questions. But beyond that, it's very difficult nowadays to disentangle personal data from what people call industrial data or general data. And the regulatory responses to that are trying to use a lot of the data without breaching principles of data protection. But there's a big tension in that, in the sense that it is very difficult to use data, but still keep, for example, principles of purpose limitation. It's important to use data, for example, individually accumulated data for legislative processes, and there it can be neutralized. But then again, using those afterwards for individual decision-making can become problematic. So we have, in the context of digitalization of our society and of public decision-making, at the same time, a massive datafication of decision-making procedures and specific challenges arising therefrom. What is fascinating is that a lot of the challenges of explainability, of reasoning, and so on are important in terms of IT programming to make sure that, for example, artificial intelligence systems remain on track and do what they are supposed to do. And that's the same challenge we have in law when we're talking about accountability of decision-making, accountability of administrations, of governments, and so on. The same terminology, same thoughts actually are developed, of course, in different ways. Then it was very interesting to see with the computer scientists how the factor that computer programs are being developed more and more in a way where even the computer science experts couldn't not tell how a certain input reaches a certain output in decision-making. And in society, we're totally used to that. We do not know how the input processed by, say, a judge or an administrator leads to the output. We can only control whether the output complies with all criteria of legitimacy which we have decided should be there. It's fascinating to see that with advanced AI technology, we're getting more and more to this point that we have no idea how the decision-making process itself works, but we need, therefore, all the more reasoning. We were able to work very interestingly with AI experts as to give them feedback as to what level of reasoning is required society-wise and legally in legal systems to make a decision hold, because there's no point in creating wild automated decision-making structures if any decision has to be annulled afterwards in a court because it does not stand up to standards. And at the same time, having the computer scientists explain to us which kind of approaches there are so that the heightened reasoning requirements which exist in the context of automated decision-making can be fed into legal thinking. But we took a little bit of a legal approach to a question of authority, which means not can a legal system grant, for example, the European Commission or the European Food Safety Authority or someone else decision-making powers, but what is the influence of digitalization and, as I was mentioning, datafication of decision-making onto the authority of decision-making coming out of such institutions and bodies of the Union? And there we conducted various case studies as to automation of decision-making by the institutions. We conducted various theoretical analysis of what does it mean to have in certain procedures built-in uses of automated decision-making. What we see is that it is very well possible, if properly framed, to maintain the authority of decision-making, but that justification, transparency, reasoning has to be increased, and that the interfaces between humans and technology have to be very clearly structured. But if that's done, it's not so that we couldn't live side by side with decision-making. It's not that we have to be afraid of a presumably ever more powerful AI. We can actually make use of the advantages and of the fact that we can't have public decision-making fall behind the reality of an ever faster decision-making by, say, banks, insurances, investors, or others. We have to find adequate tools which are capable of addressing reality. And there's no way around it, but there is a way of ensuring authority.